are some of the leadership behaviors we talked about the other day?
Aggression, aggressive,
Aggressive,
Initiator, organizer,
initiator.
interpreter. I guess that's how you say it.
What does the initiator do?
They get the group started.
Get them going. What else?
The analyzer,
Analyzer,
Encourager,
harmonizer,
blocker, assertive,
assertive.
acclaim.
Which ones did y'all say you probably were?
it just depends. Sometimes aggressive.
Somehow.
All the time aggressive.
No, not all the time.
Okay, let's go over these leadership skills first. We talked about leadership behaviors, kind of did an assessment of what we think that we might have. Okay, but let's look at leadership skills. It says, now we're talking about, these are all different things. You're leading a group or leading a project, leading a problem-solving team or whatever. These are some things that just, just skills that are helpful to have. So think these through the next time you're in a group, and I don't just mean this class, whatever class you're in. What do we need to do first? Okay, we're solving this problem. So what's step one to solving a problem? Talked about that already.
Get there.
Do what?
Think it through.
On the right
Figure
track.
out the problem.
Figure out the problem, right? Identify the problem. What is the actual problem? What are we actually trying to figure out? What's number two? That's number four. Brainstorm, right? So try to figure out everybody's ideas. Third, you're going to evaluate those brainstorming ideas, and then last, pick a solution. Okay, so you're leading a team, a group. How are you going to facilitate all of that? And here's some ways. Okay, so team meeting says set the agenda by defining goals and desired outcomes. Agendas I've always thought were kind of silly, but I am not. I mean, y'all know me. I'm not a routine person. I'm not very good at routine. I'm like fly by the seat of my pants a lot of times kind of person. So, just go with however it goes. So, but agendas, I used to think, again, they were so silly, but I've been going to these meetings with the career technology lady, and she's always got agendas for everything. And what I've found is that agendas, y'all know what I'm talking about with an agenda? Like a schedule, like a plan of how you want the meeting to go. An agenda really helps you to stay on task, and it helps to make sure that you don't leave anything out. So an agenda, if you're meeting up with the group, if you're trying to figure out a project, jot down, what all are we going to discuss, okay? One, we're going to discuss, who's going to do what job. Two, what is, let's brainstorm together. Three, we're going to pick two things that blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? An agenda. And it's best if you have an agenda you can print out and let everybody know what it is. It gives them A, something to take notes on, and B, lets them know what's coming up so they can kind of prepare themselves. So some people, that's the thing, for people like me who I'm good with just going by whatever's happening and, not having a routine. Some people don't work that way, and so that would really frustrate some people. Probably frustrates some of you guys when I'm like that in here. So, I don't know, that's something that sometimes, especially when you take on a leadership role, you have to think about other ways people are besides how you are. You got to think, okay, I've got people with different personalities in here. Just because I need to do something this way or I like this doesn't mean everybody will. So you need to try to, I'm not saying you have to accommodate for everyone all the time, but you do need to have a perspective of, that's a little bit broader than just your own. Does that make sense? Makes sense. Okay, so set an agenda by defining your goals and desired outcomes. So what do you want to accomplish at that day? And anything you guys do, any projects you have, if you're going to meet up with your group, jot down a list. This is what we need to get done today. Keep the meeting on task. Brainstorm ideas. Resolve differences by consensus. We'll talk about that in a minute. Assign follow-up tasks and items, and evaluate the session and end on time. So, what can, at the end of anything you do, what can we do better? What should we have done differently? What is, how can we get more accomplished next time? Okay, brainstorm to generate ideas. One, like we've said, problem solving step one is define the problem. Figure out what is it you're really trying to figure out. Set the ground rules. So make sure everybody's treated with respect. Sometimes that gets hard, okay, especially with teenagers. So make sure that everyone gets treated with respect. And if you see that someone in your group somebody's giving them a really hard time or whatever, stand up for them. All ideas have value, so everybody's ideas should get written down as far as brainstorming. Remember, when you're in the brainstorming process, that's not when you evaluate them. You just write them down. So take everybody's idea. And then no debate or discussion during that time. Again, you're not going to evaluate how good ideas are when you're brainstorming. You're just writing down every idea that pops into everybody's head. And then document, of course, like we said the other day. Okay, reaching consensus. And we're going to talk more about consensus in a few minutes. Consensus is a decision in which everyone participates and everyone can live with and support. Okay, so when you reach a consensus as a group or as a team, that means it may not necessarily be everybody's top pick, but everybody can at least agree to do that. It says develop criteria for the decision. So what are things it has to have, what are things it doesn't have to have, etc. Find areas of common agreement, develop a proposal, ask for a show of consensus. So show of hands as to basically a vote. Who agrees that this is what we can all move forward with. Okay, it says conflict is okay if managed. And we're going to talk about conflict management in a couple weeks too, or next week. It says conflict is essential to critical thinking because members must feel the freedom to differ. So if you have a good group dynamic going on, there's going to be some conflict because, once again, like I said earlier, not everybody thinks the same way. So, respect that. Figure out a place where you can, everybody can come to that consensus, can come to a place where you agree with moving forward. It says manage conflict constructively. So use ground rules, make sure it's fair for everybody. Acknowledge differences as they occur. So make sure that you always just acknowledge people's opinion. That will make it makes a big difference. Okay, it's just acknowledge people and their thoughts. Look for common ground and identify alternatives. So, okay, well, you're saying this. Well, I agree that, this, blah, blah, blah. However, we might look at doing it this way, or we can incorporate your idea into this plan or whatever. And then resolve quickly by consensus. You don't want conflict to go on forever because you can't get anything done that way. And then last is the team building process. During forming, members learn their roles. Storming is your brainstorming. It says members understand not brainstorming. My brain is storming right now. Storming, it says members understand their differences, often with conflict and disagreement. Norming, members recognize common interest and goals. Performing, members work productively to achieve them. And then adjourning is when members celebrate their accomplishments. Yay, we're done with our project or whatever. Okay, so let's talk more specifically about teamwork and consensus. It says individuals assume various roles when in a group. Some are elected to leadership. So maybe you're working on a project or a group or whatever, and they say, hey, we want you to be the leader. Well, what that means is you're going to be the one who's going to delegate. Do you know what the word delegate means? This is a good nursing word for all of you who want to be nurses. Delegate means you basically are passing the job on to someone else. So, for example, if I'm a registered nurse and I'm working on the floor and this patient needs a glass of water, whatever, they beeped in, they said, oh, I'm so thirsty, I need some water. Okay, I'm going to tell the CNA or the tech or whoever, I'll say, hey, room 202 needs a glass of water. That's me delegating that task. Like, they did ask me to do it, but I'm going to delegate it to someone else to do it. Does that make sense? Now, I'm not going to, if they call and say, I need my pain medicine, I'm not going to delegate that because they can't, that's not in their scope of practice. That's something I need to do. Does that make sense? Not that me as a nurse would never give anybody water, but that's something that can be done by someone else that is within their scope of practice, so that I can do things that are in mine. You know, I have more time to do medicines or IVs or whatever else needs to be done. Does that make sense? That's delegate. You're passing off whatever your task is to someone else. And delegation becomes a really big legal issue sometimes when people delegate things that aren't within that scope of practice. Do you remember what scope of practice means, right?
Like they're within.
Yeah, what your skill set is, basically, what your skills is, what you're legally able to do. So there's things that, you know, me as a registered nurse, I mean, that are within my scope of practice, but there's some things like, you know, maybe at the hospital a nurse might put in a central line. Well, I've never learned how to do that. That's not in my scope of practice. One, why would I do that here? Two, I don't know how. So, does that make sense? So delegation is something you'll hear a lot of. Anyways, it says more informal roles are assumed by all the group members. So here's some, these are a lot like the leadership behaviors. You'll kind of see some of them kind of overlap. But these are more like your teamwork. So within a team, you'll have some different people. Again, a lot of them overlap, and that's okay. You want, if your team is, you want people to show leadership behaviors in your teams because you want them to stand up and do what they need to do. Okay, number one is information seeker. This is kind of like the analyzer, but they're the one that asks the questions. They look for new ideas. They're looking for information. Willing to research topics and issues, and is open to new ideas. And I think about, you've been doing some group projects. Well, even just think about making your medical terminology game. You know, think about in here, you know, information seeker, they're the one that asks the questions. May sound doubtful, kind of, they might get a little bit critical at times, kind of like the analyzer. You can kind of think, let's kind of compare. Okay, number two is the tension reliever. This is the one who encourages risk-taking, uses humor to relieve the tension. So, have y'all ever done that before? I'm so like this. I like to start laughing about something so that everybody will calm down. I don't like for there to be a whole lot of tension. Maintains a steady attitude, calming attitude, and then looks for consensus. They're going to be the one who's going to be quick to say, okay, let's, you know, you got a good idea and you got a good idea, and I don't know, whatever. They're just going to make a joke of it to calm everybody's nerves kind of thing. Okay, the clarifier. This to me is kind of like maybe this could be kind of like the analyzer too. I was thinking interpreter, but it's not really so much. It says clarifier connects disparate ideas into new wholes, creates visual interpretations of the data, orders and organizes discussion items, analytical and critical thinker. They're the one who's going to go back and say, okay, we've got all of these terms. Let's go back and make sure we've got every definition to all of these terms. Let's make sure we've got these terms in this category and these terms in this category. You know what I'm saying? They're going to organize it all. They're going to make sure that, you know, everything's where it needs to be. The initiator, like we talked about the other day, they're going to initiate that. They're going to say, okay, guys, we need to get going. Let's get a plan together. You know, let's get started. We need to do this. Is good at assigning tasks, and there's that word, delegating actions. So I'm going to do the game. Hey, you draw the pictures, you write the words, you make the board. That's the person that's delegating. Okay. Typically is very goal or performance oriented, and then enthusiastic and positive. So keep everything going, you know, okay, you're doing a great job, let's keep going with this, let's start this section or whatever. The gatekeeper knows the rules in depth. This was always me. Watches the clock, keeps everyone in line, challenges new ideas, needs to be convinced. Okay, so this is the person who is like, okay guys, we have 15 minutes left, we need to get this done, you know, this is due on Friday, we need to make sure we're getting everything done because it's, you know, it's due. And, knows the rules in depth. They go back to those directions, look at them over and over again, make sure that everything's been done correctly. Okay, the harmonizer, group cheerleader, minimizes conflict. We talked about harmonizer with leadership behaviors. Follower, wants to do something concrete, waits for the experts to tell him or her what to do. You've ever been the follower? Waiting for someone else to tell you what to do?
Not really.
Problem is, when you get a group that's all followers, you have issues. Somebody's got to step it up. I love when that happens. Typically supports the initiators in the group. Make somebody have to step up who doesn't want to. It's a good thing. Okay, and then last is the information giver. They come to the meetings, they're prepared, they've got all the notes from last time, is always careful to state things the way that they are, and detail-oriented. Y'all can probably all think of somebody like that. Does never forgets information, but may forget how you felt about something. They're more information-oriented. They're going to come in, they're going to be ready. They may not realize that they're being rude and telling you what the information is, but they're going to get off. They're going to get the information to you. Make sense?
Those are people I don't like either.
Does that make sense? Everybody good with those? Everybody think, what are some areas you feel like you, okay, thinking of how you did the medical terminology game, what do you guys feel like was your role?
Probably the gatekeeper.
What do y'all think? Say gatekeeper. Probably the follower. If you can't figure it out.
Yeah, I think I was information seeker.
Okay. Good. Okay, it says roles are determined by personalities, qualities, and values that we have as individuals. Some of these qualities include trust, sensitivity. What is sensitivity?
Like you're sensitive to people's feelings.
Okay, you make note of things around you, right? Good. Belief in consensus. So how important is consensus to you? How important is it that your whole group be on the same page? Or is it more about your own agenda? Pride in the organization, and that's pride in a good way, not the negative kind of pride. Value of individual differences, promptness, so the fact that everybody gets there on time, everybody does their part, everybody comes prepared. 7 is organization, so how organized everybody is. That one's not at the top of my list. Enthusiasm, and then critical thinking. So these are different roles. So what we're going to do is those, well, another 5 minutes. Anyways, whenever we get back, we will have a thing, we're going to number these in order to see which ones you guys think. So kind of have an idea. Actually, we can go ahead and do that. Just do it on your paper. Ignore the numbers on the sides. What do you think? I want you to number these in order that's most important to you when working in a team. So trust, sensitivity, belief in consensus, pride. You can scratch out the other numbers and number them by what you think is most important to least important. 1 is most important. 9 will be least important. We'll come back and finish consensus after the bell.